good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy. Axel Town Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew version 1.0 deck list of the Commander in front of us by quest out brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby, it's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. As always, I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff. I'd appreciate it. The Discord's down in the description below, and it's been popping lately. I'd love for you to join. But today, we're continuing our way through Abzan week, and we're talking about one of the two new cards for the new Spirit Dragon for the Abzan, Betor, Ancestor's Voice. This one's a 5-mana, 3/5 Spirit Dragon with flying and lifelink, and we got two abilities at the end of our end step, or the beginning of our end step. We put a number of counters and up to one other creature we control equal to the amount of life we've gained this turn, and we can return up to one creature card with mana value less than equal to the amount of life we've lost this turn from our graveyard back to the battlefield. So we're going to kind of mainly focus on the first half of that, gaining life and putting counters on things. We have a lot of ways to gain life in our colors and pay off gaining life. I think it's going to be easiest. We do have some ways to lose life, and we're going to put those in there because truthfully, we expect things to get removed. We expect things to hit our graveyard. We expect to want to recur things back. And then we'll talk about some fancy ways we can gain an abnormally large amount of life and keep ourselves kind of alive if we have to rebuild and things like that. I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit early for $1 a month, consider checking it out down below. But I think Lifegain is probably one of the easiest, things to do in our colors because there's so many options, especially our Soul Sisters. Things like Soul's Attendant and Soul Warden were the original ones. We've got new ones, things like Essence Warden. We got the new Guide of Souls from Modern Horizons 3, which gains us life and gets us energy, and we can use the energy to put creatures in the air and make them flying. The really fun part about creatures like Soul's Attendant and Essence Warden is that it gains us life from our opponent's creatures entering the battlefield too. It's not just our creatures like it is for Guide of Souls. So it's cool to kind of mix these abilities together so we can get multiple things to life. Same with something, like we said, like a Soul Warden. Spike Feeder is a very interesting card. It's also a nice combo with Betor. So we could pay 2 and take a counter off to put a counter on another creature. But the key ability we care about with Spike Feeder is the bottom ability. You can remove a counter from Spike Feeder to gain 2 life. This just means that we have the ways to gain a large amount of life, and as we'll see later in one of our combos, we can actually gain as much life as we want to with Spike Feeder as an option. Whip of Erebos gives all of our creatures lifelink. Again, very useful, especially when we start having creatures with a ton of counters on them, right? Giving them the ability to gain us a bunch of life back and then passing out more counters right on the end step. But I think where our deck's going to really take that and pay off, because we do have other ways to gain life in the deck, but I think what matters is how we're going to pay off gaining life. You know, things like Archangel of Thune that's going to spread counters around all of our creatures. It's an expensive card, but it's very good at what it does in taking over a game. Blossoming Bogbeast from that Commander 2021 deck, I was really happy to see how many of those Witherbloom cards got to make their way in a deck like this. Whenever it attacks, we gain 2 life, and then all of our creatures get trample and +X on turn, where X is the number of life we gain this turn. This could be particularly brutal with Spike Feeder if you've got it set up, just giving you a huge buff. Alondra's Hierophant, whenever we gain life, you put a counter on it. Whenever it dies, we get to make a bunch of vampire tokens equal to its power. Again, really fun, right? Allowing us to go wide too. Exemplar of Life, whenever we gain life, you put a counter on it, and the first time it gets a counter each turn, we draw a card. This is really important because this could happen on everybody's turn if we have Exemplar Light out with the Soul Warden, or something like that, so that's pretty cool. Heliod, one half of the Spike Feeder combo and some other combos we have access to, says whenever we gain life, we put a counter on target creature or enchantment we control, and then for 2 mana, we can give something lifelink, which is pretty cool. Lathiel has that first part of Betor's ability, where we can distribute a counter for each life we control on any other target creatures. Right, Betor, remember, is just one creature, whereas Lathiel, we can spread them out, which is pretty nice, so we can spread those out in any key way we need to. Rock's Faithmen are just going to double the amount of life we gain. Again, very useful, especially when it comes to spreading those counters out. And then a commander that I've had a lot of fun with in the past, we've talked about in the past on the channel, and I think fits this deck really well, Sorin of House Marco. On the front side, he has Extort, and when you gain 3 or more life in a turn, after your combat, you can go ahead and flip him over. The backside of Soren has a pretty brutal ability, -1 to just deal damage equal to the amount of life we've gained this turn to any target. This is a fun ability, especially with some of the ways we have to really gain life in this deck, to just start punching through our opponents for big damage. And then if we get to the -6, we can just steal somebody's creature, make it a vampire, give it lifelink, and then use it to our benefit. Soren's a really great commander in its own right, and I think it's a nice support piece for Betor in this deck. Voice of the Blessed, kind of like Exemplar. Whenever you gain life, you're going to put a counter on it, and then once it gets a certain amount of counters, it has Flying and Vigilance. Once it gets to 10, it has Indestructible. Will of Dust, there's the commander of that that Witherbloom deck. You can pay 1 and tap it to choose another creature we control, and I say it says target creature. I just assume creature you control. Put a number of counters on it equal to the amount of life you've gained this turn or the amount you've lost this turn, whichever is greater. And we can only do that at sorcery speed, but I think this is really useful to, again, continue to soup up our creatures, especially, right, putting those counters on a lifelinker, right, so they can continue to gain us life back over time. Cleric class starts out just adding 1 anytime we gain life. The level 2 can start doing that kind of Heliod ability, giving out counters whenever we gain life. And then at level 3, we can bring a creature back from the graveyard and gain life equal to its toughness. A nice way to get a little bit of recursion on a card that just does everything we want it to anyway. But as far as life loss goes, we don't want to discount the fact that we can pay life to do things. And there's a lot of ways we can approach this. I think one of the easiest ways to do this is card effects like Bob, Dark Confidant, and Darkstar Augur. These cards that let us, at the start of our upkeep, reveal the top card and put it into our hand and lose life equal to its mana value. Gives us some extra draw and kind of gets us that life loss for the purposes of some of these other abilities. Beledros is a fun option. It makes a pest every turn, which we can gain a life when it dies, but you can pay 10 life to just untap all your lands. Again, I like the idea of that ability, right? Because then with Betor, we know we can get pretty much any creature in our deck we want back from the graveyard. And we just have all of the lands untapped that we need. This feels pretty great to just do it, untap all of our lands, have all our protection and removal mana open, right? And then get one of those key creatures back. Doom Whisperer lets us pay 2 life to surveil 2. This could actually let us seed our graveyard, right, a little bit, put things into our graveyard that we want to get back with, Betor's ability at the end step, depending on how much life this turn. I think this is a perfect deck for something like Bolas's Citadel. We should always have more than enough life, meaning that we can use life to cast things off the top of our library, and then that will also feed into, right, Betor's ability at end of turn to get things back. And then Staff of Completion might look odd. But what I like about Staff of Completion is you have to pay life to use any of its abilities. Again, we're going to have the extra life because of all of our life gain, and this is going to help trigger Betor a little more. Things like adding a mana of any color, proliferating, drawing a card. There's a lot of options on the staff, and I think it fits our game plan. Well, let's get into our combos. The first combo this isn't 3 cards, it's 2 2-card combos. Heliod is going to be a perfect combo with both of the cards on screen, with Spike Feeder and with Walking Ballista. So, Heliod and Spike Feeder, remember Spike Feeder says whenever you remove a counter from it, you gain 2 life. Heliod says whenever you gain life, you put a counter back on a creature. This is going to create a loop, where we can continually, as many times as we want, take a counter off Spike Feeder, gain the life, put it back on. Of course, Spike Feeder comes in with 2, so if we ever were to take the last counter off of Spike Feeder to do this combo, it would die, right? So we need to make sure we leave a counter on it. Spike Feeder is a whole lot less effort than Walking Ballista, although Walking Ballista arguably is the better combo of the 2 because it deals actual damage. So you can remove a counter from Walking Ballista to deal damage to any target. A lot of times it's going to end up being another player. The reason this is going to work with Heliod is because Heliod's bottom ability lets you give Walking Ballista lifelink, and because taking off a counter from it's actually dealing a damage, that's going to count as life loss for lifelink and put the counter back on it. Ballista is a very classic combo with Heliod. This isn't going to surprise a lot of older players. My only suggestion with Walking Ballista, if you're going to deploy it in a game, is try your best to bring it in with 3 counters instead of 2. The reason I say that is because remember that at instant speed we can remove a counter off of Ballista to do something. So if you were to allow Heliod's bottom ability to, if it resolves and you give Ballista the lifelink, and then you go to take a counter off it and point it at somebody and you tell the table, hey, this is the loop I'm about to do, and somebody tries to interact with Ballista, Well, you can take another counter off of Ballista and start it all over at instant speed, right, already on the stack. We want to kind of protect our pieces on the stack, especially when you start comboing. Now, the only downside of this combo is if you try to use Ballista's ability first and then respond with Heliod's ability, you walk into a really dangerous scenario where somebody can just remove the Ballista before it ever has, lifelink or that kind of thing. So you got to be careful with how you do this. Truthfully, a lot of the older players will know what you're going to do, and if they have the removal, they're going to have it. For newer players, again, just protect your combo. Have ways to protect these two in case it comes down to something like destruction, whether it be Flare Fortitude or something like that, or just some pieces of protection to protect the Ballista. But truthfully, if you can leave these two on the battlefield long enough, remember, this can't be destroyed. They have to destroy this. But again, either of these two cards with Heliod are going to lead to a great time, especially, just getting as much life as you want to. The second combo is the classic Lifegain combos. There's two pieces to each of these cards: Bloodthirsty Conqueror, and then an enchantment, and then Enduring Tenacity and an enchantment. The other half of Bloodthirsty Conqueror is Exquisite Blood. The other half of the Tenacity is Sanguine Bond. But basically, they have two effects that are going to work together. Whenever an opponent loses a life, you gain that much life. Whenever you gain that much life, target opponent loses that much life. Obviously, this can create a loop where as long as your opponent or you were to gain one life, you could pair these together to just have all your opponents lose all their life one at a time. Of course, it does target, which is important, so there's ways to get around that. But, truthfully, this is a pretty classic combo. People are going to know what to expect. The original, I believe, if I recall correctly, the original enchantment versions of these are 10 mana. The creatures are 9 mana, but again, they work together. And I think also the thing to remember is, if we have something like Spike Feeder out and you have an Enduring Tenacity, you're going to effectively win the game at that point, right? Unless somebody can get rid of the Tenacity or the Feeder or the Heliod, right? These pieces can work together. If we're gaining a ton of life, just with one Tenacity or one Sanguine Bond, you might be able to just nuke the table out with just the life gain. So it's important to remember that just because you don't have the specific pieces of one combo, doesn't mean that you can't find these ways to impose these combos together to really make big value on the board. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at Betor. And if I was to go into testing, I think the thing I would be looking at mainly is I'm not playing a ton of self-mill, mainly because I'm worried that I don't have enough ways to pay life in the deck. And so you could put in something like Ripples of Undeath, a great way to mill, and then it actually has some baked-in life that you can pay to trigger Betor's second ability. But you could also look at something like Crick to come in and be able to pay life instead of the black pips and our cost of our spells, just to, again, get some more life loss on board. I love the idea of that. It just wasn't what I was looking for out of the deck, but I imagine probably some people are going to look out of it more. I thought about something like Ikra Shadiki, gaining life equal to creature's toughness whenever they hit a player is still good. For our tokens and our smaller creatures that are symmetrical, well, it doesn't really matter. They're going to basically just kind of have double lifelink. But for things like Betor and some of the bigger creatures that have bigger toughnesses, you'll end up gaining a decent chunk of life. It's an option for you depending on how you want to go. I think these Soul Sister style things are going to be enough at most tables, but I think everybody's going to have what they want to see out of this strategy, and I think that's what makes this deck fun, is that you can take your own spin on it instead of this feeling just, life gain deck. But let's get into our playtest. The goal of playtest on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to show off our best plays, but it's to get in some gameplay scenarios and understand how we make this engine purr. Here we got a 4 mana with Caduceus, a equipment. It gives the creature it's attached to a lifelink, and as long as we have 30 or more life, that a creature has +5/+5, indestructible, and prevent all damage to be dealt to it. This is a nice key piece of protection, right, for some of our creatures. And then Lunar Convocation, a really fun card from Bloomborough. This is for that Bats deck. At the beginning of our end step, if we gain life this turn, each opponent loses a life. And then beginning of our end step, if we gained and lost life this turn, we make a Bat token. So there's some options there. It also let us pay mana to draw cards, would end life to draw cards. Again, technically a way we could, lose life for Betor's ability. So turn 1 there, we see Enduring Tenacity. So we got a nice, fun, interesting start. Turn 2, we see Exemplar of Light. So we've got some nice ways, hopefully in the future, to gain some life and start working onto our board. I think here we just get Caduceus done, start our way building up. There is Kutzil, a nice way to protect us on our turn. So Caduceus is 2 mana to attach. I'm kind of thinking something like Exemplar of Light, and then on this turn, yes, we can put down Betor, but I kind of like just attaching and playing Kutzel. This is going to let us get an attack in. It has lifelink, so we gain life. It'd put a counter on itself, right? And then we draw a card, right? And then we're not going to be above, we would have 30 or more life, actually, now that I think about it, because it's turn 5. So this would actually be a 8/8. So it's going to draw us a card off Kutzel as well, and then it would get its counter, right? So we just gained a chunk of life and a card draw from Kutzel. And then if we come back to our turn and nobody's taken care of Kutzel or Exemplar of Light yet, it already has lifelink, so the Battle Priest is going to up us. So this would be pretty good. Right now we're gaining 9, and we could chunk somebody out for 9, right? That could be pretty useful. We've got 2 extra mana after that. I don't see us doing too much with it. I guess technically we could switch this over to Kutzel if we want to. This is already in the air, and I mean, it's, you know, Kutzel's arguably better for us because it protects us from spells on our turn, right? Now they're both higher than their base for the purposes of its second ability, so we're probably going to end up drawing some more cards, but now, right, we can hit our opponents for some life with the tenacity when we go to gain life. Go ahead and attack. This is going to gain us 8, right? So this is going to go up and draw us a card. And then Kutzel saw hopefully 2 creatures hit somebody. So we're going to get a couple cards there. Again, just trying to get ourselves into more value. I think something like Bob could be fun at this point, just to set us up for next turn, hopefully, to start getting some things off the top. So let's say no one touched our board, right? We'll go one more turn. Start of upkeep, we reveal the top card of our library. It's Heliod, so we're going to lose 3. And then we'll draw for turn. I figured something like Buried Alive could be fun. At least you could still throw certain creatures in there to get back. Heliod, don't see any pretty obvious combos at the moment. Right? There's no obvious thing I can think with these 3. And there's no way for us to game like Buried Alive to go get like Spike Feeder. We could. I just don't think I can lose enough life this turn because we lost 3. Spike Feeder is 3, isn't it? So I guess technically we could Buried Alive. But we wouldn't have enough mana to play it and Betor, right? We don't, because we missed we've gotten all of our land drops in. I could set up the Spike Feeder, play Betor, you know, go put the Spike Feeder and a couple other things into our graveyard, and like maybe shoot to play Heliod next turn is my thought. I still think we're in a good spot. We're gaining a ton of life, chunking our opponents out as we got these attackers that are hitting in the air. This would be going off every turn now, right? Hopefully. And I think we're just in a good spot to call it here. I think we've gotten to a good spot. It's just kind of ironing out those semantics on that one. Here we're keeping a 3-land with Arcane Signet, Cultivate for some ramp, Guide of Souls, and Envoy. Guide of Souls, remember, you get a life and an energy whenever another creature we control comes in, and you can pay 3 energy to put a couple counters on a creature and give them flying. Remember, that works well with Ancient Envoy the Ancestors because that gives out lifelink to creatures with counters on them. So that works kind of well, right? Especially with Betor passing counters around. Here I kind of like the Signet. It feels a little odd, but my thought here with 4 mana is Guide. It's a Lasso Core, I guess. Gain a life, get an energy. I guess even just like Guide of Souls and Cultivate could have made more sense there. But now we're gaining 2 life, right? Every time a creature comes in, which is pretty cool. Going to allow us to get some more triggers. Yeah, we've got to cultivate. We've got to cultivate now, don't we? Fortunately, we missed out. Maybe last turn would have made more sense, but that's a-okay. We'll get a Plains. We'll play the Forest from hand. That leaves up Assassin's Trophy, I guess, at this point. And then, you know, nothing too great there. I think the setup turn was a little unfortunate, but we definitely needed it. Because now we could go Betor, gain 2, gain another energy. Now we can at least hand out some counters on end steps. Same thing, I think, keep the Assassin's Trophy up. End of turn, I'd probably throw some counters on, I guess, something like a Lasso Core just to make it a little bit bigger. little bit slower this time around, but that's a-okay. We just need one more creature to come in to start turning things online with God of Souls. But I think the answer now is Bolas's Citadel. We kind of got to get it down. We can play lands from the top, and we can cast spells, but we have to pay life instead of it. So we'll play the land from the top. And of course, it's another land. Nothing we can do about that. So that's, 2 mana left. I think we just attack. We kind of got screwed by just so many lands on top this game, but I think that happens. That's not a bad judgment on some of the things. We still got great protection. We still got great removal. We gain life this turn, throw a couple counters on God of Souls to make it a threat, and then look to probably put something in the air next turn. So next turn, now we see Voice of the Blessed. There's something that we can play. We won't play the land from hand this turn, just in case we, hit another thing there. But there, gain 2 life. Right, so we gain the life back, right, from paying the 2 life for the Voice of the Blessed. There's Exquisite Blood, or when it loses life, we gain that much life. So we're getting there, right? We're getting some pieces there. Reanimate to get something back. It would have seen the 2 life gains, so it would have gotten counters from that. And again, I think we're in okay shape. Not as ideal as we would like, but again, we're getting some of the pieces there. I think we would just need, I guess, probably one more good turn. But I mean, remember, we're in bracket 3, so we don't expect to win these games on turn 4, but we're still building a good board state for ourselves. Here, we're keeping a 4-lander with that Guide of Souls, Voice of Blessed, and then that Doom Whisperer to start digging. I really like Doom Whisperer. I think it's one of those cards that I expect to see good things out of in a deck like ours, especially once we can start digging for the things that we want. Here, we're going to gain a life, so this is going to get a counter, and we'll get an energy. Here, my hope is just to build up to Betor. So we'll play Kutzel, gain a life and an energy, so another counter on Voice of the Blessed. Voice of the Blessed can start, getting attacking this turn. If it hits somebody, we draw a card with Kutzel. Let's just say for the purpose of this that we do. All right, 4 mana here. We could have gone for something like Deceptive Landscape and shuffled our deck. We have gotten a few lands in a row. Maybe it's time to shake up our deck a little bit, right? Don't have enough energy yet for that, so probably just attack with the Blessed again. Let's just say for the purpose of this that it does hit. Sorry, we could have played that Hierophant, which would have actually gained us a life, so counter, and then an energy reserve. Now coming to our turn with the Darkstar Augur. Darkstar Augur is not bad. It could really help us start churning through our deck, right? Same thing with Doom Whisperer. So there's a lot of options there. Betor could also come in this turn. And, I think Darkstar Augur makes the more sense to me, only because we're going to get double. I think we're just going to get more triggers, right? Because each of these is going to trigger Guide of Souls. So 2 more energy, 2 more life. So counters here, right? So now this is now in the air with Flying and Vigilance. So it's probably guaranteed to hit this turn. The Hierophant's getting bigger, right? It's a 4/4 with Flying. So we should get at least 2 card draws here. But when Guide of Souls attacks, it could put itself in the air if we want it to, right? Or it could put Kutzel in the air. I mean, Kutzel's probably another good thing to put in the air, right? And having it be a threat. Now we've probably drawing at least 2, if not 3 cards this turn off of Kutzel's ability. And, now the Dark Stars are going to start churning stuff off the top of our library next turn. We've got something like Whip of Arrows to start gaining us a ton of life. If somebody wipes the board, at least we're going to end up with a couple, vampires. I like this. I think the board state looks a little better, right, than the last one. We'll go one more turn. So both the Dark Stars are going to go off. Sanguine Bond's going to lose us 5. Canopy Vista will lose us 0. So, lost 5 lives. So that could be important for Betor, right? Like, say somebody killed, Kutzel or something. We could play Betor and get Kutzel back this turn. 6 mana, I like the idea of Sanguine Bond, but I think Whip of Arrows still makes more sense in my head because we now have a bunch of creatures that are going to have lifelink, gaining us a ton of life, right? Really chopping these guys up, still drawing us some more cards. We got 2 mana left. I think I'd probably just wait and see what we get when we draw. So, attack. All of them gain life. We're going to gain life, meaning this is going to go up what? So if all of them attack For everything, well, I guess for everything but the 1/1 attacks. I mean, 3 of these are in the air. Kutla's in the air, sorry, as well, because of Goddess Souls. Maybe these 4 attack. That's 4 counters there. That's 4 counters there. Right. We're probably drawing at least 3, would be my guess, from Kutla's ability. And then I didn't hit anything too great for 2 mana, so we probably just start dumping some lands out of our hand. I guess we could dump a creature, right, for future turns to get back. But again, we're just in good shape. We gained what? 5, 10. We gained 20 or 18 life that turn. Just back onto our bottom line. This is even better for a board right now. And the nice part is those vampires come in with lifelink as well. And I think we're just in good shape. Next turn, we probably throw something like Sanguine Bond down. We're probably going to basically just start having our opponents get hit for double, right? Because of the lifelink and then the life loss from Sanguine Bond. And I mean, of course, if Darkstar Augur hits anything, great. There's Fetid Heath. There's Beladros. I mean, I'd probably just throw Sanguine Bond in and then just off to the races, right? We could make sense also to get another creature in, get some more lifelink that way, get some more pieces on the board. But I think this goes to show you sometimes this Lifegain engine doesn't need Betor, but Betor is a very good help, right? Sometimes when we want to get that those counters and that recursion back. But let's do one more playtest here, keeping a 3-lander with Darkstar Augur, Caduceus. There's the Bloodthirsty Concentrate. There's Archangel of Thune. It's a very interesting starting hand. We have a lot of our really big pieces. We just got to kind of work our way up there. Nothing to do on turn 2. Is that Caduceus and Darkstar are both 3 mana. I still kind of like the idea of offspringing Darkstar, but I mean, Darkstar could be a really good use for us this turn. Because at the moment, I'm doing nothing next turn, right? So we actually could still... we could still Darkstar and then offspring at this turn, right? So come back to our turn, lose 3 from the arena, lose 2 from the talisman. So we lost a little bit of life this turn, but that's a-okay. We still would be in the range of Caduceus if we want to attach it to Darkstar Augur to get that life back. That would leave us 3 mana. Kind of thinking like Phyrexian Altar just to draw an extra card. Like, I want to get Thune or Conqueror down, but the problem is I kind of want to gain that life back, right? Get it on Augur, gain some life back. We could get the Talisman in just to save up for next turn, or get that arena down for more draw. That's my thought. I feel like the answer is the arena for the more draw. And then we get a bunch of life back, 7 back, so basically gained what we lost, plus a little bit more back, right? Coming to our next turn, losing 0. 3 for Painful Truths. 1 for the Phyrexian arena, right? So now we're at 6 mana. It doesn't feel like a bad thing to now dump Archangel of Thune in now. I could do like Talisman plus Archangel, right? Because my thought here is now when I gain life, we're putting counters on everything, making them a little bit bigger. If I don't do that, it makes sense to me because then when they lose the life, we gain the life with Conqueror, and then we would get more counters. Like, this kind of feels like a good setup. Again, attack this turn. Everybody gets a counter because of, gaining life. Again, we're still keeping ourselves afloat for the purposes of Darkstar's ability, right? Losing us that life. So again, next turn, nothing for that. 2 for the trophy, 1 for arena. There we go. Spike Feeder is pretty much a combo with Archangel of Thune, right? Because we remove a counter from it to gain 2 life. Thune puts it back on. So now, I have nothing to pay off Lifegain though, right? Because Conqueror is whenever opponents lose life. I mean, that plus Beast could just be lethal here this turn. I have 3 flyers. They would all get trample, right? Do this an arbitrarily large amount of times. It has 2 counters to start. take one off, gain 2 life, put 2 back on. These grow massive, and they get the Bog Beast buff. Oh no, it's when it attacks. I think Spike Feeder still makes... Oh, we have Bolt. Can't bowl a Citadel. But I could Conqueror. That's the line. Well, yeah, I could still make my creatures arbitrarily large, right? Because I move from the Spike Feeder to gain 2 life. Archangel puts a counter back on everything, and then all 3 of them just get arbitrarily large, right? And then if our opponents don't have flyers, that's just the end of the game, right? The Augur has lifelink, so it's just going to gain us that arbitrarily large amount back. You probably knock at least a player out. If the other player survives, it's fine because we're at probably over 200 life. If we're going to be realistic, we probably would go up to 40 or 50 power right on our creatures just to knock them out wherever they're at. I guess we could have arguably put the Caduceus on Archangel of Thune just to prevent it from dying, but like if any of them are dying this turn, they're dying to exile removal, right? And the nice part about Spike Feeder, well, the Spike Feeder only has enough counters to do its ability once, right? Because if we do it the second time, it's just dead, unfortunately. But I mean, I think we're still in a good shape. It just kind of show you where some of these Frankenstein board states can get to. But I'd love to know what you think of Betor down in the comment section below, and I will catch you all in the next one.